Damir was an oil tycoon who made his fortune through painstaking and selfless work to the point of sweat. Even though his father was a millionaire, all he left his oldest son after his death was a small piece of land in a god-forsaken village. This seeming injustice was explained by the fact that Damir was an illegitimate son, and when his father drew up the will, Damir's interests were barely taken into account. The legitimate family did everything in their power to make sure that all the family money went to the other son, born in marriage. Unfortunately, as it often happens, the stepbrothers didn't get along with each other, since the legitimate son, who inherited the family's fortune, was a proud and arrogant man. So after the death of their father, Damir and Mansour didn't even see themselves as relatives anymore. The younger brother, proud of his wealth, often said that if it was up to him, he'd leave the illegitimate son without any inheritance at all. "You should be grateful that you got at least some of our father's money," Mansour laughed at his brother, hinting at a piece of land left to the man by his late father. Damir endured Mansour's ridicule in silence, trying not to react in any way to the stinging attacks of his brother. Mansour didn't even realize that it was this mocking that cost the men their relationship. Damir didn't take offense and didn't hold a grudge against his arrogant brother. Instead, he packed up his things and left for the distant village with virtually no residents. It was in that village that the land inherited by the illegitimate son was located. All that the land bequeathed to the man had was rock-solid ground and a hot, scorching sun overhead. Not long before his death, Damir's father wanted to conduct exploration works there, but he never had the time to do it. Then he had a stroke and had been bedridden ever since. Damir didn't whine about his fate. He was sure that there were oil deposits on this land. Unfortunately, the site didn't have any equipment for drilling oil wells. Of course, Damir didn't have the money to buy it, so he asked his younger brother for help. Damir promised his brother half of all of the oil deposits if there were any. Any other person would consider this offer extremely lucrative, but not Damir's arrogant brother. After listening to the man, Mansour shook his head, saying that he wouldn't give him any money. When Damir said goodbye and headed for the exit, the younger brother added, "I already told you that I won't give you a penny. Nothing's changed. And if I were my father, I wouldn't have left you with anything at all." Refusing to give up, Damir started looking for investors, but no one wanted to invest in a business with an unpredictable outcome. The rumor of a very determined man who was looking for sponsors to develop oil fields had spread far beyond the local area. After 2 months of unsuccessful search, his late father's sister came to see Damir. The man hadn't seen his aunt in over 10 years and was very surprised at the unexpected visit. As it turned out, the woman was aware of Damir's problems and came to help him. Thus, the man got his initial capital for the implementation of his complex plans. Damir used this money to buy the equipment he needed for drilling, and together with his mother's relatives, installed the oil rig. Imagine Damir's joy when after 2 weeks of hard labor under the scorching sun, they finally managed to find oil. It was an undeniable success, and it immediately changed Damir's life for the better. The deposit he found turned out to be very large, and just a few months later, the man became a millionaire. Nevertheless, the young oil industrialist didn't lose his head because of the easy money that came into his life. Even though he was already a millionaire, Damir continued to personally manage the oil production process, eventually turning into a professional in this field. His brother Mansour was blinded by rage, but there was nothing he could do about it, since the site where the oil field was located belonged to Damir by law. The newly made millionaire gave his aunt back the money he borrowed, and in gratitude for her kindness and support, he decided to give her 10% of all the oil revenues from that site. Damir skillfully managed his finances, reinvesting them into the development of his business. 5 years later, he became one of the most influential oil industrialists in the region. Meanwhile, his brother Mansour wasted his fortune he inherited from his father and came to Damir for help. Smiling ironically, Damir gave his brother a taste of his own medicine, reminding him of the times when he refused to help Damir. Working hard to increase his wealth, Damir didn't forget that he needed to start a family. He married a woman 10 years younger than him, and together they learned the joys of family life and parenthood. Damir adored his daughter, Layla, but he raised her in strict discipline, wishing to teach the girl the importance of hard work and prudence from an early age. The head of the family rarely pampered his daughter with expensive gifts and didn't accustom her to excessive luxury. Lila was a smart and capable girl who, despite having helped around the house, knew how to cook food for the whole family and do the cleaning. Thus, Damir tried to make sure his daughter grew up knowing that she needed to achieve everything in her life on her own, instead of relying on her parents' money. His wife often reproached Damir for being so strict with their daughter, pointing out how their millionaire friends were raising their children. But Damir was set on raising their daughter to be a worthy and decent person, not allowing the excessive luxury to turn her head. When it was time for Lila to get married, the oil tycoon decided to handle this issue himself. To the great disappointment of Damir's rich friends, who considered their sons the best match for Layla, the wise father rejected all the millionaire suitors who tried to woo her. Many of Damir's friends accused him of being a grumpy old man who didn't know what he wanted from life. But Damir was wise, and he didn't let anyone alter his plans. Continuing to firmly stand his ground, he methodically weeded out all his daughter's rich suitors. One day, he went to a distant village to buy land for the development of a new oil field. The deal was successful, and when Damir was getting ready to go home, he saw a young man working tirelessly on this land. "Who is this man? Does he have a family?" the old man asked, raising his eyebrow. "Oh, this is Karim. He is a lonely orphan who worked very hard to earn money to build this house," replied one of the local residents with respect. Damir frowned and thought for a bit, and then he came up to this man and asked if he would like to marry his daughter. To the great surprise of the oil industrialist, Karim rejected his proposal. The honest man justified his decision by the fact that he didn't want to be financially dependent on his wife's wealthy relatives. He added that he would marry only for love and after he achieved success on his own. Damir liked Karim's answer. He headed home, thinking about the man's words along the way. The next day, the smart businessman asked his daughter to go to the village to check if everything was in order with the paperwork for the deal. Unsuspecting Lila arrived at the remote village, where of course, she ran into poor Karim working in the yard. As soon as the two met, they immediately felt a strong mutual sympathy, which made their hearts beat faster. Of course, Karim had no idea who this woman really was. At this point, Damir's upbringing proved itself successful, as Lila didn't feel comfortable being dishonest with her relatives. Lowering her eyes in embarrassment, the young woman told her father that she liked one of the workers at his oil site. Lila was very afraid of how her parents would react, but she really couldn't get a handle of her excitement. To her surprise, Damir smiled and gave her his blessing. And so, a little while later, Karim asked Layla's father for his daughter's hand in marriage. The young people had their wedding, and Damir's friends laughed at the old man because he had to marry his daughter off to a poor man with no family or money. But Damir didn't pay any attention to their ridicule, and being very pleased with his daughter's choice, he continued to multiply his fortune. Because of his age, the old oil industrialist began to gradually transfer the management of the company into the hands of his son-in-law, who immediately proved himself as a man with strong business acumen. To the surprise of Damir's skeptical friends, the company's profits continued to increase. Many failed oil industrialists couldn't comprehend how Damir managed to be so successful and asked the old man about the secret of his prosperity. Smiling in response, Damir explained, "You mocked me for marrying my daughter off to a poor man who knew the value of work and hard-earned money. You married off your daughters to suitors from wealthy families who only knew how to spend their parents' fortunes, but had no idea how to increase it. And that's why they simply spent all the money you earned." From the way Damir said these words, it was clear that it was Damir's time to mock his skeptical friends. The man once witnessed the same thing happen to his brother, and Mansour's example convinced Damir that hard work and perseverance were much more important than inherited wealth and other material possessions. After all, if you believe in your dream and you're ready to do whatever it takes to make it happen, one day fortune may truly smile upon you.